We have a lovely app. We can sign in and out. But we have no place to keep it. We have no host. It's not on the web. So let's fix that. We could use GitHub Pages, but we're not going to use GitHub Pages. We're going to use Firebase. Because look, authentication, database storage, hosting. Why not? We're already using Firebase. May as well use it for this too. If you look at the Create React App README, which I've mentioned before, is really good. It has the user guide down here. It has the table of contents for the user guide, rather. And near the end of that is deployment, third from the end. Deployment tells us several things. One, the npm run build creates a build directory with a production build of your app. So we can call that with yarn build since we're using yarn. So if you look at your files here, we have a node modules folder, a public folder, and a source folder. If you run yarn build, you'll see a build folder show up. And that is the real version of your app. So keep in mind, as we're writing JSX, that's not real JavaScript. We have a whole build process we have to do to make this something that a browser can actually understand. It's just that the dev server that we run with yarn start is doing that in the background all the time. So we don't have to worry about it while we're in development mode. If you want to try to copy this to a web server, it's not going to work as is. There's no index.html, and even once there is, it's not going to load any of our JavaScript files. So the build folder will contain an index.html that will actually link to our real compiled JavaScript. If you look in the static folder here, you'll see a JS subfolder with only one JavaScript file. That is all of the JavaScript for our app, including all of our dependencies, all the stuff that we wrote. It's all here in this one big file smashed all together. So that's the magic of our build process. It spits out our index.html and a single JavaScript file. That's the only JavaScript file that's loaded in the whole thing. This will contain just one script tag linking out to that. But even this, it put all in one line to reduce space. So I made this as small as possible. So that is the actual production version of our site that you could copy to a web server if you had just a static web server running somewhere. But we don't want to just copy it to a static web server. Let's keep reading. Other solutions. Okay, we could use Azure, Firebase. Hey, I know that one. So yes, we have special instructions for hosting a React app on Firebase. First, we need to install the Firebase command line interface, the Firebase CLI, by running npm install -g Firebase tools. And as usual, that might take you a minute. Let me paste this in Slack. So run npm install -g Firebase tools. When that's done, you'll want to run Firebase Login to actually log into Firebase. Then we'll run Firebase init and very carefully follow some instructions. They are detailed here, but we will go through them as well. Yep, it's in Slack. npm install -g Firebase tools. When you have them, if it hasn't finished installing yet, just watch. Then you can do it when it does finish. In your project directory, you'll want to run Firebase init. It'll give you some choices that you can select with up and down arrow and spacebar. Which Firebase CLI features do you want to set up for this folder? Just hosting. So arrow down to hosting and hit the spacebar. Does anybody get an error about something about interactive mode? If you do, if when yours finish and you run Firebase init, you get an error about interactive mode, let Dana know, and she'll tell you how to fix that. Yeah?
When I press or I type Firebase Login, do I allow Firebase to collect anonymous CLP?
That's up to you. I don't let people collect stuff if given a choice. If they're going to ask, I'm going to say no. but that's up to you. So just choose hosting. Okay, select a default Firebase project for this directory. Select the one you've already made. So in my case, chat S3 afternoon will be just fine. And this is an important one, and this is a non-default answer I'm giving it. What do you want to use as your public directory? It suggests public. No, that is not what our public directory is. It's our build directory that we want to use. So you have to type in build. Very important. Configure as a single page app. Yes, indeed, we are making a single page app. Build index HTML already exists. Overwrite. Nope, I'm happy with the one we have. Thank you. So no. And it's done. So as we continue reading, it tells us all these instructions. Important, you need to set proper HTTP caching headers for serviceworker.js in Firebase JSON file. Okay? Otherwise, after you deploy the first time and you deploy subsequent changes, it'll be cached and you won't see your changes and it will drive you crazy. So it is important to change this. So what we have to do is open up open up Firebase.json. You'll notice what actually happened when you ran that Firebase init command. Created two new files, .firebase.rc and Firebase.json. We need to make a little change to Firebase.json. So Firebase.json has this big hosting block here. Just inside there, so after this array, we need to paste this in. So I'm going to copy my entire Firebase.json. Yours should be the same. So that thing I copied out of the documentation goes right here. Remember, all this is documented in the Create React App README. You can get this information later, even when I'm not here to tell it to you. I got it all right here. I wanted to know how to deploy a Firebase app how to deploy a React app to Firebase. This is how I found out. Now then, after we run yarn build, which creates our build directory with the current version of our app, we can run Firebase Deploy. So let's first run yarn build again. Yarn build builds a production build in our build folder. When it's finished, we'll run Firebase Deploy. And that will actually upload the build directory to Firebase, and it'll tell us the URL. Here it is. So I'm going to copy this URL. Let's open Let's open it up in a browser tab. And there it is. Keep in mind, if stuff isn't working, keep your developer tools open so you can see if there are error messages. Let's see if mine's working. So far, so good. Seems to be working okay. Since it is, I'm going to go to my GitHub repository. And remember this. Edit. Click the edit button. Actually do this if it's working. Go to edit. Paste your website in there so that people who view your GitHub repository can actually click it and see the working app. What now?
So you need both a cloud-based server, or not server, like a cloud-based storage and host.
So the host to run it, and this is for hosting our source code, yeah. So that's for the actual deployed app. This is for our source code. Yeah.
When I do Firebase init, it says command requires authentication.
Okay, do Firebase Login first. Firebase space Login.
Hit that, and then it says not run login and
Non-interactive mode. So that's the thing that we need to ask. I forget what. Week 3, day 8, right above the homework. There you go. Run Firebase Login -- interactive. Yeah. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah. it wouldn't be a bad idea to go back to your app settings here, developer settings, find the app that you just made, wherever on earth this is. Here it is. Change this so that the homepage URL is the one that you are actually using. Not a bad idea.
Why is cloud service and also the hosting free again? I think that's like it's very different.
What's that? Why is it free? I don't know, man. I don't know.
Like it's like if I were to in the future create like an actual website for some actual user to use this like Firebase.
Yeah. So if you had high traffic, you had a lot of users, that kind of stuff, it's going to stop being free eventually. But they want to get you hooked so that you'll use it on commercial projects. We're not quite done with this, so keep in mind we have to do two things when we make changes. If you want to deploy again, you need yarn build to actually recompile the project and Firebase Deploy to actually copy it up to Firebase. So we could make this a one-step process by adding some scripts to package.json. So check out package.json. You see the scripts section. We have start, build, test, and eject. Let's add deploy. So put comma here. Let's put deploy. And we'll make deploy Firebase Deploy. But here's the cool thing. We can put pre-deploy and have that run our build script, which if you see is actually React scripts build. That's what yarn build actually does. So we can put that there. And then if you run yarn deploy, it'll actually run both of those. It'll automatically run pre-deploy. But before I do that, let me change one more thing. Let's add a homepage field up here at the top of package.json. And let's paste in that URL. Not that URL. This URL. Go ahead and put that in your package.json. So I added deploy and pre-deploy scripts here under package.json. I'm going to commit this. Configure Firebase hosting. And then I can just run yarn deploy. Automatically runs React scripts build, which actually builds out the folder with the production version of the app to be copied up. And as soon as that's finished, it will run Firebase deploy. There it goes. And my latest version is up there. So don't forget, when you make changes, pushing to GitHub is not going to update it on Firebase, right? You have to actually run yarn deploy.